Good morning. We're learning as a schus for Shlema Filan Chaye Baserach. We are on Daf Chofhei Amud Aleph. A new sugya. Tanarabban. 4 lines in the bottom. Tanarabban. Dam shenitma. Dam that became tamei v'zorku, and you throw it. You do the zrikas dam on the mizbech. B'shoigig hurtza. B'mezid loy hurtza. B'shoigig he gets the carbon is considered a kosher carbon, not just a kosher carbon, but also the Bailam get ritzui, they get acceptance of their carbon. But if you do it b'mezid, loy hurtza. If it was done b'mezid, it's not going to get hartza. Now the Gemara later on is going to bring a machlekes. What does it mean dam? What was b'mezid? What was done b'mezid? Does it mean that the dam becoming tamei was dam b'mezid? He stuck a nevela onto the dam, or he brought it in, he touched it as a tamei mace? Or does it mean the kohen was zayrik the dam b'mezid even though it was tamei? Certainly, you're not allowed to be zayrik dam when it's tamei. The question is what we're referring to? Are we referring to that, or are we referring to making the dam, which is part of a kodesh? You're not allowed to make kachim tamei, and you're not allowed to be zayrik dam b'tuma. The question is, when we say hurtza, what is it? When we say he did it b'mezid, what does it mean? But for the next amud, it's not really relevant up until the end of the sugya. Zakt Gemara b'medvar mamurim. But the question is, why is it hurtza altogether? The chayre dam, we've said that a kachim that become tamei is possible. So how is this working? So this is what we've said, that tzitz is meratza. There's a unique get out of jail free card legabe tuma, that since the kohen gadol, when the kohen gadol is wearing the tzitz, the havois bringing a carbon betuma is allowed, which is distinct, as we'll see in a minute, from the din of tuma hotra betzibur. That tuma is not does not always stop. There are cases where it will not apply, but generally a carbon sibur that's brought, even if it's tamei, it's you still can bring it lechatchila. But on a yachid, there's a separate din, a different din of that the tzitz is meratza, which tells you b'di'eved, if something is brought betuma, even for a yachid, it's going to be meratza. But now we're saying a limitation. B'mezid, it will not work. Zok the Gemara, like we just explained, b'medva mamurim b'yachid. That's only b'yachid. I would see, but bein b'shayik, bein b'mezid hurtza. This is all as long as we're talking about the tzitzis being meratza. When we're talking about tuma hotra betzibur, it's not going to make a difference whether the carbon is tamei b'mezid or b'shaygig, whether the zrika is b'mezid or b'shaygig, which as the case may be. It's going to be hartzah, because, like we said, it's coming from a different source. It's because tuma hotra betzibur. So the Gemara, conversely, ba'avid keichavim. Bein b'shagig, bein b'mezid, bein b'aynis, bein b'ratzin. This whole din of the tzitz being meratza will not apply to an ovid kechavim. An amud beis loy hurtza. It doesn't apply to an ovid kechavim, because the Torah says, it says lohem legabe the Yisraelim loy hurtza. The Rashi, the third line, to say v'hei al metzchay tamid l'ratzin lohem loy lo'avdei kechavim. It's only the tzitz is only meratza for the benefit of Yidden, not for non-Yidden. So we're going to ask a kasha now, which we said that it's b'shaygig avaloy b'mezid. The din that the tzitz allows a hartzah, it allows a carbon to be accepted, even betuma, that we said applies b'shaygig avaloy b'mezid. We see in a brisa, amat tzitz meratza. What is tzitz meratza? What is a tzitz allow that it's going to be accepted, even though it's even though even though something should be possible, al adam, bala basar, bala chaylev. It's on all parts of the carbon, whether the dam becomes tamei and needs to be thrown on the mizbeach, bala basar, the basar that's supposed to be eaten by either the kehanim or the bailim, bala chaylev, the chaylev that gets thrown, that gets burnt on the mizbeach, shenitma, when it became tummy, bein b'shaygig, bein b'mezid, bein ba'inus, bein b'rotzen, bein b'yachid, bein b'tzibur. We say under all circumstances, even if it's whether it's b'shaygig or b'mezid or ba'inus or b'rotzen. So that even if it's b'mezid, there's no real difference between mezid and rotzen. They're both different versions of means that he did it intentionally, and it was nothing forcing him. But we're saying it's still going to be maratza. So the chayr it's a steer, right? We had said the din of ritzui of the tzitz only helps when it was done b'shaygig, not b'mezid. And here we have a brayso that says the tzitz is going to be maratza to allow the carbon to be brought and to be effective, even b'mezid. Rav Yosef, Rav Yosef says loy kasha. Harab Yosi harabana. This is Rabbi Yosi and this is Rabban. What does that mean? The Tanya. Ein tarmin minatame alatar. There's a mitzvah, there's a chiyuv to take truma from your tuah. A person grows tuah, he has to take truma and give it to the kayin. We have a din that you can't be tirim from. So when you take truma, you take part of the tuah and give it to the kayin. There's a din that you can't take min hara al hayafa. You can't take the disfavored, the less favorable tuah to give to the kain. You have to give from the best stuff. The rule is a truma that becomes tamei, the kain can't eat it. He's not allowed to eat truma tamei. Truma is not allowed to become tamei. If it becomes tamei, he can't eat it. You could still give it to the kain midaraisa, but the kain's not going to be as happy with truma tamei because instead of eating it, he's going to have to sell it. He's going to have to use it as firewood or something. He's going to, but he can only be benefit from it without eating it. So you're not supposed to do that. V'im taram, but if he did so, b'shaygig, if he taram b'shaygig, truma say truma. If he did so, if he separated the truma b'shaygig from tummy truma tmeya, from tamei produce, it's going to the separation of the truma is going to be truma, and he's going to it's going to go to the kayin, but that's b'shaygig. B'mezid ain't truma say truma, but b'mezid his truma will not. We're machalik between b'shaygig and mezid, like our first brisa said the gabi the tzitz being miratza. We said the tzitz is only miratza b'shaygig not b'mezid. The Tanakama over here says the same thing, Lagabi, separating truma, that it's only gonna work b'shayik not b'mezid. Rabbi Yosi, I'm a bein b'shayik b'mezid truma say truma. Rabbi Yosi says the truma works even b'mezid. So Rabbi Yosi maybe is the mandam of the second brisa that said that the din that sits as meratza is even b'mezid. He says, since he says l'gabi truma, that even if you went against the takana that you're not allowed to do, you're not allowed to separate min hara ala yafa, that he's even if he did it b'mezid, it's still going to be a good truma. We don't penalize him. He'll be the mandam of the brisa says we don't penalize someone who brought a carbon betuma. Who brought a carbon while it was tummy, and he depended on the ritzui, the mezid. It's going to be meratza. It's going to be effective, just like we're saying by truma. It's going to be effective, even though he shouldn't do so. Frek the Gemara. Ema de shamet lei the Rabbi Yosi the lei kanis the leikonis. Where did we Rabbi Yossi say that we don't make a knas even though he did it b'mezid? The miratza tzitz. He only we only have a raya that he's saying that the tzitz is going to be a miratza. It's going to be effective. That it's going to be a kosher carbon. Al achilos mishamet lei. But if you remember the second brisa that said, we're saying that Rabbi Yossi allows it. But we had said, Alma tzitz miratz, al adam val abasa, val chaylev. Hold on a second. That's the second brisa. Right. The second brisa is saying all things. It's saying not just that the tzitz is miratza, but also that the either the kayin or if in the case of a carbon chatas or the yisrael, if there's basar of the of the of the for let's say a shlomim that the bailam can eat it. We're saying it's going to be even b'mezid, bein b'sheg b'mezid. It's going to be eaten. But we didn't ever said such a thing. By the truma, all we said is that when he separates the truma, it's going to be truma. But obviously, the truma tmeya, the kohen is not going to be allowed to eat it. But over here in this brisa, we're extending it, and we're saying amat tzitz miratza al dam v'al basar v'al chaylev. We're saying even the basar that's left over, we're saying that it could the tzitz is being miratza even on the basar that should be allowed to be eaten. Obviously, the basar it does not affect the acceptance. Basar, the basar is the leftover after you do the zrika, after you do the four avodas. The kohanim or the bailam are allowed to eat the basar, but it's nothing to do with the ritzui, with the acceptance and the kapara. The kapara is already done at the time of zrika. So how can we extend to say a raya that Rabbi Yossi says even on achilas? And the Gemara has a raya of Atanya. Ibn Eliezer Omer, hatzitz miratza al achilas. Ibn Eliezer says that the tzitz is even miratza to allow something to be eaten, to allow the bus to be eaten. Rabbi Yossi, I mean, tzitz miratza al achila. Rabbi Yossi says the opposite, that the tzitz is not miratza al achilas. So how can we say he's the man da Amar who says that the tzitz is even going to be miratza al adam val abasa val chaylev? How it's being miratza on the basa? Sagt Gemara, Eipach. Rabbi Eliezer Omer ein hatzitz miratza al achilas. Rabbi Yossi Omer hatzitz miratza al achilas. You'll switch it around and say in the brayso Rabbi Yossi is the man da Amar who's saying that tzitz is even miratza al achilas. Maskef la Rav Sheshes. Rav Sheshes says no. Listen, you have it all figured out. But we have a problem. We have a raya that Rabbi Yossi holds that tzitz is not miratza al achilas. Umi matzas abel slave Tanya. Yachol basar shenitmer lifnei zrikas damim. I might think that basar. Now we have to keep in mind this is one of the confusing things from back in Zvachim. I know everything is confusing, but one of the particularly confusing things is we have to focus on the difference between the basar becoming tamei, which a basar that's tamei is also is pasul, and there's also an isser that a kayin who's tamei is not allowed to eat kosher, or not allowed to do avodah. So here we're switching over. Until now we've been talking about the basar or the dam or the chaylev becoming tamei. Now we're going to be talking about the kayin betuma vatani. Now it starts off still. Yachol basar shenitmer lifnei zrikas dam. So this is not really relevant immediately, but it happened to be basar that was tamei, that became tamei before the zrika. You chayav aleihem mishum tuma. I might say that the kayin who is tamei, or a person who's tamei who eats it, should also be chayiv for eating kachim betuma. Meaning, if the basar became tamei before you did zrikas dam, right? You have a carbon, you shechted it, and you have the dam in a kli, and you have the basar waiting for after the zrikas dam. After you do the avodas hadam, then the basar will be mutter. But what happened was the basa became tame, which is not really right, but it's before the zrika, and a person who is tame ate the basa. So it's before zrika. So this basar had never really become eligible for eating. It's not kachim that's eligible for eating, and he ate it before the zrika. Maybe so. It's not in its full kedusha as basar that he should be chayiv for eating it betuma. So maybe you should be chayiv for that. Talmud loimer kol tar yochel basar. This is the pasuk that says it's talking about a person that's tar can eat basar of kachim, but not someone who's tamei. It says kol tar yochel basar. Someone who's tar can eat basar. But a person who is tamei and he eats the kachim, the nichrasa, that person will get karas. So we learn from that. If it was after Zrika that the basar had become allowed to be eaten by someone who's tar, then there's going to be a chiyuv for someone who's tamei to eat it. But basar that's before Zrika, that it not yet become eligible and mutter to be eaten to someone who's tar, he's not going to be chayiv for eating it betumah. That's the Bryce's first thought. The one says, but the Bryce continues, but maybe that's not true. How do you know to dash in the pasuk this way to say that there's no chi of achila betumah when the kayin is tamei when it's lifnei zrika? Maybe it's saying a different thing. Maybe it's saying that which is mutter to be eaten by tahir, not before zrika, but for other reasons that it's not just lifnei zrika, but even something that is precluded from being eaten for a different reason. Like we're going to say, you should be chayav l'mishum tuma. She'en echal tarin, ein chayav mishum tuma. Oitza nias alon. That's how the oitza. She'en echal lo tahirim. If the basar is left over, if it becomes nicer, it's also to eat. And if it's yaitz, if it goes chutzla, it's mkaimai, right? The basar of kachim kalim has to be eaten in Yerushalayim. The kachim has to be eaten in Nazara by Kehanim. If it goes out of there, it's not allowed to be eaten anymore. Maybe those things as well, since they're not allowed to be eaten for these other reasons, even if the person is tamei, he's also excluded from eating it. He's excluded from the chiyuv of eating it betuma. Tamilai mashal Hashem riba. The Hirsch says Ashel Hashem no. That even if it's lon or yaitza, if the person is tamei who eats it, he's going to be chayiv for eating kachim betum. Maybe once I'm telling you that, I'll say also pigel and noiser. If someone eats them while he's tamei, he's also going to be chayiv on them. For tomorrow, noiser hainu lon. What are you talking about? We said that nitrous is included, that it's going to be chayiv when he eats it betuma. It's only lifnei zrika that's not. So Gemara, ela af hapigulin kenoisus. The Gemara says it doesn't mean to say pigulin and noisus. It means pigulin will be. Maybe I would say pigul should be like noiser and should be marba, that you're going to be chayiv on it when you eat it betuma. Tamalam mizevach hashlamim mir. The Torah says mizevach hashlamim. It's memayit that something that is pigul is not going to be chayiv, since the pigul, we're going to see, pigul is excluded, just like before zrika, the basar is not going to be chayiv. It's not going to be considered niter l'tahirin, and therefore it's excluded from the din of achila, of the iser of achila betuma, getting cars for achila betuma. The same thing, if something became pigul, it's also going to be excluded from achila betuma. So why am I being marba why am I being marba lifnei zrika and pigul, and I'm being moitza? I'm sorry, just pigul. Why am I being marba pigul and excluding noiser and yaitza. So I'm going to include in the chiyuv the for eating betuma the lon and yaitza that they already had the zrika and they were allowed to be eaten, and then something came up. He took it outside of the azara, or he took it outside of the Beis Hamikdash, or he waited too long past the zman, so it became puzzle. But originally it was kosher, so therefore we're going to say it has a chiyuv of achila betuma. But pigol, which never had a zman that it was kosher to be eaten, as soon he had the machshava prior to the zrika of the dam, so never had an ability to eat that basar, that will be excluded from the chiyuv of eating betuma. In fact, the Gemara, v'im timer, basar shenitba lifnei zrikas damim, basar that became tamei before the zrika of the dam. But then he waited for after the zman of zrika. Right? Because we had said in the brisa, we said before zrika's dam that became tamei before zrika's dam, maybe you'll be chayiv for eating it when the person is tamei before zrika. But if you wait till after zrika, as long as you had the zrika, it's going to be taught. You're going to be allowed. The tzitz is going to be miratz on it. So basar nil fnei zrikas dam v'achol achas zrikas dam b'nei chayev alehem mishum tuma. So why should that be mechayev on it? So since it never had a zman, this if we're saying that it depends on whether it had a shasa kosher, this dam, the basar that became tamei before zrika's dam, and you waited till after the zrika's dam, the mashmais of the brisa was at that point it will be able to be eaten. It never had a shasa kosher, so it's meratza. Because the tzitz is meratza. Tuma is different. That the tzitz is meratza on tuma. Again, we have to keep in mind the tuma of the basar itself. Until we've been talking now, we switched over. You remember talking about the tuma of the person, but the tuma of the basar, even after zrika's dam, is going to be pater because it's going to be hortza because it's going to be allowed to be eaten. Ne'esh it's meratza.
One second. So that means that we're talking here about the case of a pickle, right?
No, we're not talking about a pickle now. Okay. We're trying to contrast between we because of the din of pickle. We said the wise pickle have a din that if you eat it, you're going to to get my thing straight. That it's going to be like basal fnei zrikas dam, that you're not going to be chayiv for eating it as a tamei. Pickle, you're not chayiv for eating it when you're tamei, when the person eating it is tamei. Just like if he eats basar before zrikas dam, when he's tamei, he's also potter. It's not yet. That basar is so not kachim basar that you're not going to be chayiv for eating it while the person is tamei. But we said, why is that different than lon and yaitza? So we said lon and yaitza, since they have a shasa kosher, so therefore you're going to be chayiv on them when you eat it betuma. But pigel and lifnei zrika, you're going to be potter. But we said it's mashma only if he had basa that became tamei. The basa became tamei, not the person is tamei. So if he eats it before zrika, he's going to be potter. But if he eats that basar tamei la'achar zrika, he's going to be chayiv. I never had a shasa kosher. So we say it's because the tzitz is meratza.
He's going to be chayiv on it?
He's going to be chayiv for eating it if the person is tamei. The person is tamei. So if the tzitz is meratza on the tumah of the basar, It takes away the taint of the tum of the basar. So what's wrong with this basar? Right? The problem of you if the way it works is for a person to be chayiv for eating something while he's tamei, it has to be real kosher. So we say, for example, if he eats it before zrika, then it didn't yet become the basar did not yet become what it's supposed to be as far as kosher. But on the other hand, let's say he eats basar that was long, he waited with it too long. He ate it after it became nicer, after its time. So it originally was basa that he could eat, but now he can't eat it anymore. Or if he eats basa that went out of the place where it's supposed to be. So originally it was good, and then it got ruined. That's still considered sufficient kosher that he's going to be chayiv if he's tamei. If the bailim who's eating it is tamei, he's going to be chayiv eating kachim betuma. So now we're asking, but the mashmayis of the brisa before was that if you have basa that is tamei, it became tamei before zrika, and you waited till after zrika to eat it, we said you're going to be chayiv for eating it if the person is tamei. And I never had a shasa kosher, so why isn't it more like anything, even if it's not tamei before zrika? If you eat it before zrika, it's going to be he's not going to be chayiv. Let's say he should also not be chayiv even la'achar zrika because it never had a shasa kosher, just like pigel. So he said it's because the tzitz is meratza. Mashma nitma in yaitzeloi. It's only if it became tamei, but not if it was yaitze. Mad shamet lei the Amar ein zrika me'elis liyaitza. So who's the man the Amar who says that when you zayrik the dam when it was already yaitze before zrika, that means it's only if it becomes tamei beforehand that the tzitz is going to be maratza in it. We're going to say if someone who's tummy is going to eat it, he's going to be potter. That's legabe. That's only legabe tuma. But for yaitza, if the basar went b'chutz before the zrika, you're still going to be potter on it because the zrika is not going to work, and it's going to be considered like it's not kachem at all, and therefore you're not going to be chayiv for eating it, even if the person is tamei. Man shamali de amar ein zrika me'elis liyaitza. Who is the man de amar that says once the basar goes is yaitza, that it's not going to be considered kachem anymore? Before zrika, it's not going to be considered kachem anymore. The zrika is not going to make it into kachem. Rebbe Eliezer. This is the shita of Rebbe Eliezer in Me'ilah. So Dr. Gemara. So this is going according to Rebbe Eliezer. And in the course of our discussion, we said that the reason why that if the basar is tamei, the reason why he could eat it is because even la'achar zrika, if he waits la'achar zrika, because he said that tzitz is meratza al achilas, so therefore it's still going to be considered, even after zrika, it's going to be considered that it was able to be eaten, and therefore the kayin who eats it, or the person who eats it betuma, is going to be chayiv. So how could you say this is going like Rabbi Eliezer? We were saying that that Rabbi Yossi is the mandam who says tzitz meratza al achilas. We want to be epech the brisa before in order to that was dependent. We needed that in order to answer our question, the stira of the brises. So we said that we have to say Rabbi Yossi is the mandam who says tzitz meratza al achilas. But over here we're bringing a raya that this man the Amar who's saying the brisa over here that's saying that tzitz is meratza al achilas is Rabbi Eliezer. Ela Amar Rav Chizda. So Rav Chizda says a different kasha, a different teretz to our original question. So we can back up again and go back to our original question that we talked about on Amid Aleph. We brought the brisa. The original brisa was dam shenitma v'zarku b'shoigig hurtza b'mezid loy hurtza. That dam that became tame and you zayrik it. That if you do it b'shoigig, the tzitz is going to be meratz and b'mezid not. And then we brought another brisa that said that that the tzitz is going to be meratza even b'mezid. Lagabi the dam and the basar and the chelav. So how do we answer that stira? So El Amar of Chizda like kasha Har Eliezer Har Rabbanan. No, we're going to say fakert. We just said that Rebbe Eliezer holds tzitzis meratz al achilas. We proved that Rebbe Eliezer is the mandama who says tzitzis meratz al achilas. So therefore, he's going to say it's going to even be b'mezid. It's going to be meratza and the Rabbanan achayla. So the Gemara, "Eimed the shamalei Rebbe Eliezer the meratza tzitz al achilas." Do we know that he'll say? We only know that he says you could eat the basar because of the tzitz being meratza. Do we know that he says there's also going to be a ritzi from it? He says, yeah, that's not a problem. Just like we say in Rabbi Yaisi that the tzitz meratza is going to be both on achilas. It's going to have the same din legabe achilas as it does legabe meratza. It's not going to be. We're not going to cancel him that's not meratza. You say the same thing like Rabbi Eliezer. The time Rabbi Eliezer, I'm a bein b'shayik, bein b'mezid, truma say truma. We said Rabbi Eliezer said Lagabi where we had brought our raya, where we had asked Akasha from truma. We want to bring a raya that Rabbi Yossi says that Yossi I'm a bein b'shayik, bein b'mezid, truma say truma. Aim of the shamalei Rabbi Eliezer, but truma the kil. So we said that Rabbi Eliezer says bein b'shayik bein b'mezid truma say truma. He's going to say that bein b'mezid it's going to be truma say truma. He's going to say like Rabbi Yossi that we said before. So Gemara aim of the shamalei. So you see that he says it even legabi being meratza. So Gemara aim of the shamalei Rabbi Eliezer but truma the kila the kachim the chamira mishamalei. Gemara says how could you bring a raya from truma? Truma is more kal than kachim. Maybe over there you get a ritzay. Even though, I mean, it's not really a ritzi. Over there, it's saying that the truma will work, but eating truma tmeya is not as chomer as kachim tame. So how could you bring a raya that the chamim are not going to make a gzeira on kachim? So Gemara, imkeino aman tarme. When it says, how could you ask a kasha saying maybe Rebbe Eliezer doesn't extend even to kachim? We're trying to find out who the mandamer is. We're being productive and you're being destructive. You're just asking a kasha saying Efsher not like this. But Efsher, yeah, we were trying to find the mandamer, so we're suggesting to Rabbi Eliezer, don't say maybe I'm wrong. You can't ask a kasha by saying maybe it's not so. He does extend it even to kasha. Ravina Amatumasa bein b'shayik bein b'mezid. Ravina gives a different teretz. This is going back to what we had said right at the beginning. Ravina says Tumasai is bein b'shayik bein b'mezid hurtza. If the person who was metamet, meaning he made a tameh, it doesn't make a difference whether it's the shayik or mezid. Like the second brisa, it's gonna be meratza zrikasai. But if he zayrik it, if he takes the tameh and he zayrik it on the mizbeach. That's where we said in our first brisa, the brisa that we started off the Gemara with, that it's only going to be b'shayig. But if he does that b'mezid, to go and take something that he already is tamei and bring it on the mizbeach, he's not going to get hartza. If
Ravina is an amoira, right?
I'm sorry.
Ravina is an amoira.
Ravina is an amoira. He's just suggesting what the explanations of the two brises are. Yeah. He's saying he's being chaylik on Rav Chizda's pshat and the first pshat. He's saying a new pshat and how to answer the stira in the brises. And he's saying it depends on what the mazid was. Was the mazid that he made the kachim tameh, or was the mazid that he took the dam that was already tameh and he was zayrik it on the mizbeach? Rav Shila Amar punkt faket. He says. Then when he did the zrika, it doesn't make a difference. Even if he did it b'mezid, he's going to get hartzah. to Masay b'shogeg hurtza b'mezid loy hurtza. But if he's talking about when it became tamei, that's only if he did it b'shogeg. If he does it b'mezid, it's not going to be meratz. He holds that's the Muhammadic one. Second moral of Shila hadik tani shenitma bein b'shogeg b'mezid. It says shenitma. It says shenitma. It says it's talking about that it was nitma is bein b'shogeg b'mezid. He holds when he's metamet that it's only been b'shogeg, not b'mezid. Even though it says shenitma, it means bein b'shogeg bein mezid is going on zarku. Toshma dam shenitmis. And what about the other side of it? Dam shenitmis. The other brisa says dam shenitmis v'zarku b'shogeg hurtza b'mezid hurtza. Our original brisa had said the dam that became tamei and then you zarek it b'shogeg hurtza b'mezid hurtza. According to Rav Shila, it's dam once it's zarku when he's zarek it, it's whether b'shogeg or b'mezid. Hachikam. Again, we reread it. Dam shenitma v'zarku bein b'shogeg b'mezid nitma b'shogeg nitma b'shogeg hurtza b'mezid loy hurtza. He's going to reread it to say that when he zarek it, if it was originally nitma b'shogeg then it's hurtza, but if it was nitma b'mezid, then it's not going to be meratza. Okay, we'll stop over here, and we'll see you again, Motzei Shabbos. I'll
Yes,
try to
correct.
send around the recording as soon as possible. You have to see. You have to hear the beginning of this one.
Not Stam.